Hi, we at Video Professor understand how hard it can be to learn to operate a computer. In the next few minutes, you will see just how easy we make it. You know, nothing will teach you as fast as our videos. So in no time, you will be on your way to achieving your goal, knowing how to operate your computer. By having this video, you can refer to it and learn from it at any time. Now listen to what some people just like you found by using our videos. You know, they really work. So enjoy this easy computer learning, and thanks.
If you're ever trying to learn a computer system through manual or on your own, have you ever sat there and said, God, I wish somebody who just knew how to do this would just sit down and show me. I hate trying to learn it on my own. And that's exactly what these tapes do. They sit there, they're a tutor right next to you, and they show you just how to do it.
I was kind of amazed. I started out with the first one and, gosh, didn't have it on but maybe 15 minutes, and I knew more, it seemed like, in that short a time than I did reading 50 pages in a book.
People have libraries of books. Today, people have libraries of tapes, and Video Professor would be an integral part of a personal or a professional tape library.
As a teacher, I really appreciate the step-by-step organization of the tapes. They allow each person to work at their own pace, in their own time, and to review as necessary.
You can go back and review whatever you want, and you don't have to have a teacher there saying, don't you remember, I told you.
Welcome to the Video Professor's series of computer learning tapes, the nation's #1 computer trainer. We'll take you step by step through learning to use your computer software. On the screen now are some other tapes available in our series. When using these tapes, we suggest you watch them in their entirety. Then go back with your computer and practice each step. In keeping with the Video Professor's dedication to giving you the best lesson possible, we have packed these tapes with information and sometimes move at a pace that is faster than you will be able to follow along with as you are working with your computer. Remember, you can always pause or rewind the tape to learn each part. Now let's get started. And welcome to my tape on getting started with your personal computer, an introduction to DOS 6.0 and 6.2. In this tape, you'll learn the basics of how your computer works with DOS. Viewers, we will be displaying and working with DOS 6.0 for this lesson. If you have version 6.2 on your system, you may notice that some messages on your computer screen may vary slightly from our display. Don't worry, the commands given in this lesson work the same in both versions. For this lesson, I assume you have a computer with at least one floppy drive and 6.0 or 6.2 installed on a hard drive, and at least one software program like a word processor or spreadsheet program already installed. You'll need at least one disk containing some data or programs and 2 new floppy disks for use in drive A. I also assume you have a mouse installed. If you don't have DOS 6.0 or 6.2 installed, the instructions are simple. First, turn on your computer and its monitor. Next, exit Windows or any other shell program if one appears to the DOS C prompt. Before starting setup, you will need 1 or 2 empty disks for drive A. Now insert setup disk 1 in the appropriate drive. Then type either A:setup or B:setup depending on which drive you used. Simply follow the instructions that appear on screen. We recommend you press enter or answer yes to accept DOS's suggestions for installing itself. If you have questions concerning the procedures or options in setup, press F1 for help. You can exit out of setup by pressing the F3 key. During setup, 6.0 determines what computer hardware and software you have now and installs itself accordingly. When setup prompts you to insert the uninstalled disk or disk, do so using drive A only. If your computer doesn't work properly after setup, you'll need the uninstalled disk or disks to uninstall DOS 6.0. Although setup suggests you run double space after finishing installation, I suggest that you wait until you are more comfortable with DOS and how data compression will affect the other software applications on your hard drive before you do this. Setup also suggests you run MemMaker now. Don't. I'll show you how to run MemMaker later. Before going further, I'd like to introduce you to my student helper, Lisa. Ready to get started, Lisa?
Hello, Professor. Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, let's start off by learning the basics of how a computer works. You've probably heard the words hardware and software before. Well, the information on the floppy and hard disk is referred to as software. The computer parts such as the monitor, CPU, keyboard, and printer are referred to as hardware. The main part of the system is the CPU, which stands for Central Processing Unit. It contains all these computer chips and circuit boards and is the factory for processing data. It is the brains of the system. The one bank of chips I would like to point out here is the RAM chips, which stands for Random Access Memory. These chips take into their memory information or data that is stored on a floppy or hard disk and keeps it there while you are using it. For example, if you were to load a game into the computer, the information on your game disk would be put into the RAM chip so you could play the game. The thing to remember here is once you turn the computer off, the information stored in these chips is lost. The information on your disk, however, is permanent. So when you want to play the game, you just load it into the computer again. The keyboard is the main component for entering data into the system. It is similar to a typewriter, however, the added keys makes it possible to do many more commands. All keyboards have the same types of keys, but vary as to where these keys are located. They all have function keys which can be located on the left of the keyboard or along the top. These keys, usually marked with an F on them, have many purposes. Each program you run will use them in different ways. Some programs come with templates that fit over these keys, showing what they are used for. All keyboards have arrow keys which help you point and move to different parts of the computer screen. The Enter key, sometimes referred to as the return key, is the most used key of all. It usually has a bent arrow on it. This key is used to tell the computer to accept commands we want it to do. We will demonstrate how some of these keys work when we have something on our screen to work with. The monitor is where you see displayed the programs and data that is entered into the computer. They vary widely as to the resolution, meaning the sharpness of the image and how many colors they can display. Monochrome monitors have one color, and some monitors can display millions of colors. Printers also vary widely. The three basic styles are dot matrix, which print with little dots and makes letters look a little ragged. These printers have the capability to print graphic designs. Daisy wheel printers, also referred to as letter quality printers, print with solid letters like a typewriter and prints high quality letters but is limited to one style and size of its letters. The laser printers also print very high quality letters, but unlike the daisy wheel, can print all different sizes and styles of letters and print out all kinds of graphic designs. All of these components are worthless without programs to run with them. The programs that allow you to do things with a computer are always originally stored on a floppy disk. A floppy disk comes in two different sizes, 5 1/4 and 3 1/2 inch. They get the name floppy because the actual disk is floppy, even though the floppy disk in the 3 1/2 inch size is enclosed in a hard case. These disks hold lots and lots of information. It's kind of like the way a cassette works, which stores and plays sound. The diskette stores and plays data. When inserted into the computer can read the information on that disk and display it on the screen. Games, computer programs, and even letters to a friend are all stored on these disks and are referred to as data. Taking care not to damage a disk is very important. You should always put them in their protective sleeve and store them in a safe place. A hard shell, dust-free container is best. Keep away from heat and sunlight, drinks and cigarette smoke, magnetic sources such as telephones and TV sets, physical damage such as bending them, and don't touch the exposed area of the disk. There is another type of disk called a hard disk. The hard disk is a much thicker disk, usually located inside the computer itself, and can hold many, many times the data a floppy disk can hold. And a newer disk called the CD-ROM disk can hold even more data than the hard disk. Other than the speed and amount of information these disks hold, there is no difference in the way information is stored on them. Since the hard disk drive are internally mounted and can hold much more data than floppies, it has become the practice to take information stored on floppy disk, such as computer programs, and store them on the hard disk. To keep these stored programs separated on the hard drive, you create what is called directories for each of these programs so you can tell them apart. The first thing you need to store on your hard drive is DOS. When you installed DOS 6.0, it created its own directory on the hard drive. DOS stands for Disk Operating System and is the program that makes your computer work. In other words, you cannot run any software programs on your computer without first loading DOS. And what is a disk operating system? Quite simply, an operating system is a translator. You see, you have your computer hardware, that is the CPU, monitor, and keyboard, and you have your software, that is the word processors, games, or other programs. The operating system takes instructions from these programs and translates them into instructions the hardware can understand. Computers are very simple machines. They need system software such as DOS to transform high-level commands like copy this letter into simpler instructions the computer can understand. Okay, Lisa, let's turn the computer on. Make sure to turn your monitor on too. With DOS already installed on your hard disk, this is all you need to do. This starting action is also called booting up the computer. The disk drive will activate and you will see a light blinking on the hard drive as DOS is copied from the hard drive into the system memory or RAM in the CPU. You will hear a beep in a few seconds. Some information about your DOS and computer system will appear at the top of your screen. You may then see a request for the date and time. Some computers are set up with an internal system for keeping track of this automatically, so you won't see this. You can skip entering the date and time by hitting the return Enter key twice. Let's do that. Simply press the Enter key twice. That is the one with the bent arrow on it. I must emphasize that entering the date is very important. Once you've started working with programs and documents on your computer, you should now see a semicolon followed by a backslash and a greater than sign, followed by a short blinking line. Don't worry if yours looks a little different. This is known as the command line or the DOS prompt. If you don't see this, your computer has probably been set up to start running some sort of shell or software program. You need to exit any of these programs and join us at the C prompt. Most of these programs will tell you somewhere on the screen how to exit or have a file menu where exit will be located. So we can all be starting at the same place. Everyone type CD / and enter. This action takes us to the root directory. We'll discuss what we just did later. With the C prompt displayed, DOS is waiting for you to enter a command. There are all kinds of commands you can type here to ask DOS to do different things. We'll cover some of these commands, but first let's see how to enter them. Notice the blinking line after the prompt. This line is called the cursor and marks the spot on the screen where commands will be entered when you start typing. Lisa, try typing your name. Notice how the cursor moves over a bit to mark where each letter will show up next. If you make a mistake here, you can correct it using the backspace key, which is usually located near the top right area of your keyboard. It has a straight arrow pointed to the left on it and sometimes has the word back on it. Try this. Hold down the G key for a couple of seconds. Notice how the letter keeps repeating itself. Now press the backspace key and notice how the characters are erased one at a time from the cursor position to the left. Okay, hold the backspace key down until all the text is erased and we are back to the prompt. The current drive that is shown at the DOS prompt, drive C in our case, is called the default drive. Default is a computer expression meaning until you tell DOS otherwise, every action you perform will go to or come from the default or C drive like a home base. For example, a default color could be a background color you wanted to have on the screen every time you wrote a letter. Then, every time you started your word processor to write that letter, the screen would change or default to that color. If we had an A prompt on the screen, all our information would default to or from our A drive. Here is how you can change the default drive. You must first insert a disk you know contains some data or programs into the A drive. You are now looking at a floppy disk drive which is located on the CPU. The floppy disk drive has an opening for the disk to go into and a little handle called a drive door. On a single drive system, there is no problem finding drive A because it can only be drive A. But on a two-drive system, referred to as a dual drive system, the second drive is drive B. The A drive is usually the top drive, but not always. You may have to check with someone to make sure which is drive A. To insert the disc in the drive correctly, make sure you have the smooth side up, the side with a label. Make sure the end with the disc exposed in the oval hole goes in first. And close the drive door. At the C prompt, type A:, and press Enter. We now see our DOS prompt is A:, and all data will be written to or read from our new default drive, the A drive. Okay, everyone type C:, Enter, and we are back to our C drive. It's possible your computer's hard drive is partitioned into more drive names. Your system may have a D drive and possibly an E drive. If you're not sure, you can find out by typing D or E:, and pressing Enter. If the drive doesn't exist, you'll get a message saying invalid drive specification and will be returned to the active drive. Lisa, you can have up to 26 different drives. Again, at the C prompt, DOS is waiting for us to give it a command. Usually you would be starting some kind of program like a word processor here, but this lesson is about learning what DOS does, so let's take a look at some DOS commands. One of the most used is dir, which stands for directory. Let's see what entering dir at the prompt will do. Lisa, type dir. Remember, if you make a mistake, you can press the backspace key one or more times to correct it. Now press the Enter key. The dir command displays a list of all of the files contained in the root directory on the C drive. Remember, we said the drive can be divided up into different directories. The root directory will display these. Notice all the file names followed by the word dir in brackets. Those are your directories. The dir command is used to show you the files contained in directories and or floppy disks. Let's try it again, Lisa. You should still have a program or data disk in drive A. Now type A:, and Enter to tell DOS to look at that drive. Then type dir and Enter. We put a word processing disk in our A drive and are now looking at the files on that disk. Type C:, and Enter. Viewers, watch as we look at another directory. If you have a large number of files on a diskette, DOS will scroll directly to the end. Lisa, did you notice that as the files went racing by, that there were many more files than we could see in this directory? Let's look at a variation of the directory command to fix this. But first, let's clear the screen. We do this using the CLS command, which stands for Clear Screen. Go ahead and type CLS and press Enter. This clears the screen of all information and returns you to the prompt. We'll be doing this throughout the lesson to make things easier to see, so don't be worried if our screens don't always look alike. Let's add the /P option to our dir command. After the dir command, type /P, as you see now. When the Enter key is pressed, watch what happens. The screen stops at each screen full. Notice the message. Press any key to continue. To advance the listing, simply press any key until the entire directory is seen. Again, notice the names with the dir beside them. Viewers, your display will look different than ours here, but the principle is the same. The programs you have on your computer should show here with the dir beside them. Viewers, look in your root directory listing to make sure you have a DOS directory. If you don't, your DOS may be residing elsewhere. To find the name of your DOS directory in 6.0, you type dir space /s space memmaker period exe and press Enter. Along with other information, the display will show a line that starts with directory of C:/ followed by the name of your DOS directory. Typing CD / and the directory name will take you to that directory. The CD stands for Change Directory. Viewers, you need to type our next command with the same name that shows as your directory. Lisa, type CD /DOS and Enter. This takes us to the DOS directory on the C drive. Okay, everyone type dir space /P and Enter. And you now see the files in the DOS directory. Now let's get a better idea about what these files are. The first column displays the name of each file. Files are the computer's way of organizing information on a disk. Hard and floppy disks hold files just like a filing cabinet you would see in an office or library. Think of each disk or directory as a drawer in a filing cabinet. Suppose this drawer contained a word processing program. When you open the drawer, you can see all the files that it contains, just like the dir command does to look at the disk or directory files. Now, suppose that in this filing drawer, you had a letter to a friend. All you would do to see it is open that file. The same is true for the files on the disk. If you had a letter to a friend, all you would do to see it is open that file. This is an oversimplified explanation because each file has certain procedures that need to be followed to open that file. The files you see on this DOS directory are separate programs that the computer needs to operate and to perform certain functions. For example, the file diskcopy.com is a program which makes exact copies of files from one diskette to another. Other disks or directories may contain files that are lists of information like names and addresses, or they may be word processing documents like your letter to a friend. Files are either programs or data. DOS has certain rules about file names. A file name can only be 1 to 8 characters long with an optional extension. An extension is a period followed by 1 to 3 characters. The period does not show up in this file listing. A file name can include the letters A through Z and digits 0 through 9. You can use most of the special character symbols like $signs, %signs, or the underscore character, but there can be no spaces between characters. Oh, one more thing. Each file must have its own unique file name and extension. No two files in the same directory can have the same file name and extension. The extensions must be different if the file names are the same, and the file names must be different if the extensions are the same. As you can see on the screen, there are files with the extensions EXE, COM, and SYS. These extensions are usually abbreviations that tell what kind of file it is. For example, EXE stands for execution. COM is a command file. SYS is a system file. Some word processors automatically name all documents with the DOC extension. LTR is an extension that is often used to designate a letter. There are many other types of extensions. Some programs add their own, and others let you create them. Like the letter to your friend, you could enter under the file name an extension friend.ltr. Generally, if a file name has an extension, you must include it when you refer to that file. The next part of the file list displays the file size, which is measured in bytes. This part of the file tells how many bytes the file is taking up on the disk. The word byte is a computer term which is generally regarded to be the same as a character. A character is any letter, number, symbol, or space between them. If you have a floppy disk that holds 360,000 bytes of information, that means it can hold about that many characters or enough letters to make a paperback book of approximately 240 pages. Hard disks come in many sizes. To give you an idea of how many bytes they can hold, a small 20 meg hard drive can hold 20 million bytes of information, or as much information as 55 360K floppy disks. The last part of the file name shows the date and time the file was created or last modified. Remember when we first started the computer, I said it was important to enter the date. Well, here's why. When you create or modify a file, the current date will help you distinguish it from other files, making it easier to keep track of. At the bottom of the file listing, we see how many files are in that directory and how many bytes are free, meaning how many characters can be added to the directory. Lisa, let's look at a few more variations of the dir command. The first will have a /w replacing the /p. Type dir/w. This will display the directory in columns. Watch. You will notice that this method does not show the file size or the date and time. If you had more than one screen full of files with /w, the /p option can be added here to stop at each screen full. Earlier versions of DOS only had the /p and w switches for looking at directories, but with DOS 6.0, there are many new ways to look at file names plus a new help command. Before we go any further, let's look at the new help facility in DOS 6.0. Lisa, type help, a space, dir, and press enter to further explain what we have done so far. This new help screen follows the usual Microsoft conventions. There's a title bar and a menu bar with file, search, and help menu titles at the top of the screen. There are keyboard shortcuts located at the bottom left of the screen and a mouse drag bar on the far right side of the screen. Let's look around for a moment. In the center of the screen is a definition of dir that explains what the dir command does. Below that is the word syntax, computer talk for the standard way of asking DOS to carry out commands. All DOS commands from append to xcopy follow this basic format: command name, space parameter, space switches. Syntax here shows the command dir followed by several things in brackets, which means that these are optional parts of the command. There are 3 parameter elements available for dir. The first is drive, which means you can type dir space a : and press enter to see what files are on drive A. When we did this before, we went to drive A using the drive command and then did a dir. By using the drive element in your dir parameter, you can work from where you are without changing directories. The second and third elements are path and file name, which allow you to find specific files in specific places. Press down arrow until the word parameters is at the top of the screen to see the dir parameters. You could use dir with the drive and the path elements, such as C:\, WP51 / document, to show you all the files in a document subdirectory of a word processing directory on the C drive. Something to remember here, folks: even though some commands don't need a space, it's a good idea to always use a space after a command and the first parameter and between parameters. Lisa, press the down arrow again to see the dir switches, which indicate how the command is to be carried out. We have already seen how the /p and W switches work. And if you keep pressing the down arrow key, you will see the rest of the switches available in DOS 6.0. For example, you can combine /p and /o to give you an alphabetical display by the page. There is a lot more to help, so let's use it to find out even more about dir. Lisa, up arrow until the cursor is on the word note, which has graphic marks surrounding it. To move between these or any other topics encased in these marks, press Tab to move ahead or Shift Tab to move back. Press Tab and Enter to see examples of the dir command and its parameters. The title block changes to MS-DOS Help dir examples. Look at the dir /s/w/o/p example. Lisa, pull down the File menu and exit out of this help screen so we can try its dir example. At the DOS prompt, cd back to the root directory. Then type dir space /s/w/o/p and press enter. You just asked dir to list the names of the subdirectories of the root directory and the names of the files in the root directory, including extensions. Then dir lists the subdirectory names and file names in each subdirectory in the directory tree. This should list all the files and subdirectories on your C drive. You may be surprised how many files there are. Lisa, if you don't want to view all the files at this time, you may press the Control and C keys at the same time to end the display.
Professor, I understand looking at files on a floppy disk using the dir command, but I'm a little confused looking at the directories on the hard drive.
Lisa, a hard disk can hold many different programs on it. The one program every computer must have is DOS. Other popular programs are word processors for creating text documents. Databases are used to keep track of names and addresses, such as you see in the phone book. Spreadsheets are used to keep track of finances, using numbers like a calculator to show profit and loss. Desktop publishing lets you draw things and design the way you might put a newsletter together. And of course, there are games. Each of these programs lists as a directory on the hard drive, and each directory contains its own files. To help keep the programs separate and organized on your hard disk, different directories are created for each. And within these directories, you create more directories or subdirectories to put and organize different types of data created within those programs. In this example, the first directory on the hard disk is called the root directory. This is what DOS looks at when you first boot the computer and get the C prompt. Then DOS has its own directory. Other directories would be for the programs we mentioned earlier. Then each of the programs could have subdirectories of their own. The structure of these directories is referred to as the directory tree because the different branches from the root directory does resemble a tree. Lisa typed tree, a space, and a backslash. The backslash tells DOS to display the tree beginning at the root directory. Now press enter. Here is how DOS displays our tree structure. Viewers, yours will look different depending on how your computer is set up. We'll see more of this when we get to the shell. Remember we had you type cd/DOS? That told DOS to look at the DOS directory. Again, the CD stands for Change Directory. To change to any of these directories from the command line, you type cd/ and the name of that directory. Although it's good to understand the principles of how this works, selecting directories in the shell, as we'll see in a moment, is much easier. Okay, before moving on, we need to create a work disk to practice with. In order to do that, we need to learn about the DOS command format. The reason for this command is a disk must be formatted before it can hold data. You can buy pre-formatted diskettes, but usually you must format new disks. The format command physically prepares the disk to hold data by creating invisible tracks and sectors. This is kind of like an unmarked parking lot. Until the lines are painted on it, cars don't know where to park. These tracks and sectors tell data where to park. The format command also checks for defective spots on the diskette. You need to format a diskette when it is new. However, you can format it again at any time. This is called reformatting. But be warned, reformatting erases any data already on the diskette. DOS 6.0 can retrieve a disk's data, but we won't be covering that in this lesson. Now be careful here. If you are following along with the tape, be sure to follow our instructions carefully. We don't want you to reformat and erase any disk that may be important. A sure way to protect from erasing any disk is to attach what is called a Write Protect tab. Simply cover up the notch on the side of the disk with the tab, and no information can be written over the data already on the disk, while the computer can still get information from the disk. To Write Protect a 3.5-inch disk, slide the little tab so you can see through it. Okay, everyone should still be at the C prompt in the DOS directory. Now remove the disk in Drive A and take the new blank disk we asked you to have ready and put it into Drive A. You can use an old disk, but remember format will erase everything on that disk. Now type format /S, a space, and a colon. This tells DOS to format the disk in the A drive. The /S tells DOS to copy 2 hidden system files we need onto this disk. Everyone press enter and notice the message Insert New Diskette in Drive A and press the enter key when ready. With the disk we want to format already in Drive A, press the enter key. The messages and numbers displayed on your screen will vary here depending on the type of system you have. This takes a while, so we'll skip to the end. When DOS finishes formatting, the messages Format Complete and System Transferred will appear. And you're asked if you want to enter a volume label to name this disk. We don't need one, so press enter. Now displayed is the bytes of total disk space, the bytes available on disk, and finally, you are asked if you want to format another disk. This message also may include information about bad sectors. Lisa, we don't want to format the other blank disks, so press N for no. And press enter. Now we have a formatted diskette. Before we get to the DOS shell, I'd like to demonstrate the copy command from the DOS prompt to make sure you understand the principles of how DOS works. Lisa, make sure you are at the C:DOS prompt. Let's copy 2 important files to Drive A. First type copy space C colon, AutoExec, period, bat, space A colon, and press enter. The message "one file copied" will be displayed. Now type copy space C colon, config.sys, space A colon, and press enter to copy the second file. The C drive is the source drive where our files are located, and the A is the destination or drive we want to copy our files to. It is source, destination, or from to. Actually, you don't need the C colon in this command since we are on that drive to start with, but it is always a good idea to add it to make sure there are no mistakes. To check and see that our files were copied, type dir space A colon, which tells DOS to look at the directory for the disk in drive A without leaving the C drive. Press enter and here are our files on the disk in drive A. Now that we have an understanding of what files are and how DOS commands work from the command line, let's learn about the shell. Lisa, type DOS shell and let's add /G, which tells the shell to go into graphics mode, and press enter. Notice the shell reading all the files and directories as it comes on screen. The DOS shell is a graphical environment, which means commands, directories, and file names are visually listed for you to choose and manipulate with the keyboard or mouse, instead of having to type out and remember DOS commands and file names. If you previously installed DOS 6.0 and worked within the shell, it may look different. If it does, press the F10 function key, then V, then F, and our screen should look somewhat the same. The screen is divided into several windows. The title bar displays that this is indeed the MS-DOS shell. The area just below is the menu bar where we can choose commands and different ways of displaying the shell. We'll come back and explore this and the other parts of the screen better after a quick tour. Directly below the menu bar, the active drive is displayed. This should be a C:/. Then there are drive icons which represent all the different drives on your machine that we discussed earlier. Icons are little graphic pictures of things like file folders or disks to help you visually see what you are choosing. The highlighted icon in this display also shows which drive is currently active, C in our case. The next area, Directory Tree, displays the different directories on the C drive, which we saw from the DOS prompt earlier. The window to the right of that displays the files of the selected directory in the tree area. This is like having the dir command we typed earlier always displayed. The bottom area shows the main program list, which allows you to go to the command prompt. You can choose the MS-DOS editor to write text files and MS-DOS QBasic for programming. Last is the Disk Utilities submenu, which allows you to do some disk utilities like the format command we did earlier. To work in any of these areas, it must first be selected to activate it. Lisa, press the Tab key, and the selected area changes from the first area, Drive Icons, to the Directory Tree area. Press Shift-Tab, and the selected area goes back to the Drive Icons. Press Tab twice to move to the File directory. Again, the File area displays the files of the selected directory in the tree area. Notice the title bar becomes highlighted to show this area is now selected. By pressing the Shift and Tab keys together, our selection moves back to the tree area. Lisa, move your mouse around and notice the cursor, now a pointer, moves around the screen in a corresponding manner. Now move it anywhere into the File area and click the left button once, and notice that the area is now the active area. Now move your cursor to the tree area and click anywhere in that box to activate it. Here is where all your directories are displayed. The top shows our root directory for drive C. Under that are all the directories and subdirectories that exist on the C drive.
Professor, what exactly is the difference between a directory and a subdirectory?
Actually, there isn't any. It's all in the way you look at it. This is where this window gets the name tree structure. The C: is the main or root directory. Everything else in this tree structure is a subdirectory of the root directory, and each of these directories can have subdirectories of their own. Click on our desktop publishing program, the Aldus directory, in this window. Notice I said directory instead of subdirectory. That is because when it became the current directory, it left its substatus, and any directories that are created in this directory would become a subdirectory until it's activated and becomes the directory. Confusing? Not really. Just think of it like this. You are the son or daughter of your parents. But as you have children, you become the parent. So now you are a child and a parent at the same time. It's all in the way you look at it. Lisa, did you notice when you selected the Aldus directory that the files of that directory were displayed in the Files window? And the title bar now reads Aldus. Now select the DOS directory and notice the DOS files are now displayed in that window. Now click anywhere in the Files area and press the down arrow key until the chkdsk file is highlighted. This is a DOS command to check a disk. With the Files area active and our file selected, move your cursor to File on the menu bar and click on your left mouse button once. Any commands chosen in this file menu will work on our selected check disk file. When an ellipsis, 3 dots, appears after a command, a dialog box will drop down asking for additional information. Lisa, remember how we copied the files from the command line earlier? Well, now let's see how to copy files to our disk in Drive A using the shell. Move your cursor to Copy and click on it. A dialog box appears asking us where we want to copy the selected file to. Type A:, and move your mouse pointer to OK and click once. Let's see if our file did copy. Lisa, move your pointer to the symbol for A drive and click once. Notice the tree area changes to show we are looking at the A drive. And in the Files area are the files we have copied so far, including CommandCom, which we added when the disk was formatted. Lisa, select the C drive again, and then select the Files area. We'll do more commands in a minute, but first I want to show you the many ways in which you select items in the shell. Lisa, move your mouse once again to the File menu. While holding the left mouse button down, move the mouse downward. Notice how the highlight moves accordingly through the menu options. When you get to Copy, release the button. The Copy window appears again. This time, move your pointer to Cancel and click once. Notice the bottom of the screen has the message F10 for Actions and Shift F9 for Command Prompt. Shift F9 will take you back to the familiar DOS prompt. If you go there, typing Exit will return you to the shell. Lisa, press F10 and notice the main menu now has highlighted or underscored letters in it. This is to show you what letters to press on your keyboard to select options. Press F for File, and our File menu appears. Beside some choices are speed key commands that also select that option, and again the highlighted letters for keyboard users. Lisa, use your down arrow to highlight Copy, or press C, the highlighted letter for Copy, and our Copy area appears again. Press Tab until the cursor moves to cancel, and press Enter or hit the Escape key. The same principles work for all areas in the DOS shell. As you can see, you can use both the mouse and the keyboard together. There are usually several ways of doing things, so you have the choice of which one suits you the best.
Professor, what are the little pluses for in the tree area?
If there is a plus in any directory, that means that it contains subdirectories. Lisa, click on a directory with a plus inside, and its subdirectories appear. To close the branch, simply click in the directory box again. Now press the letter D, and the cursor jumps to the first entry starting with the letter D, DBase in our case. Lisa, press the D key again, and the DOS directory is highlighted. Press the Tab key, and the Files area is highlighted. Now press the down arrow to move downward through the file names. Press Page Down to see a new screen full of files. Now type U, and the cursor moves to the first file starting with the letter U. There is one more file search tool mouse users have here, the scroll bars on the right of some areas. Clicking on the arrows at the top or bottom will scroll through the file list. Or you can click anywhere in the scroll box, and that portion of the files will be displayed. Lisa, press Control and the / keys,
and all the files in this directory are highlighted or selected. Now select the File menu again. Normally, you would want to move, copy, or delete our selected group of files. In this case, we only want to show you the File menu commands to select and deselect. So select Deselect All, and our files are back to normal. Lisa, let's look at some other ways to select files. Move your cursor back into the Files directory and click on a file towards the top of the displayed list. Then move the cursor down several files. By holding the Shift key down and clicking on the last file, we select not only the first and last files, but all those in between. These files will remain selected even if we leave this directory. To deselect a sequence of files, just select another without using the Shift key. To select a sequence of files with the keyboard, use your arrow keys to select the first file. Then, while holding the Shift key, use your arrow keys to select the remaining files in the group. To select two or more files, not in sequence, select the first file you want, then press Shift F8. The word Add will appear in the status bar. This tells us we can continue to add to this selection with a simple hit of the space bar. First, use the up or down arrow to move to the second file you want, then press the space bar to select it. To select groups of non-contiguous files, click on the first file, then press the Shift key while you click on the last file in the group. To select the next group of files, press and hold down the Control key while you click on the first file name in the next group. Then press and hold down the Control and Shift keys while you click on the last file name in the second group. For the most part, we will just tell you to select options for the rest of this lesson. You can decide which selection method you like best. Before we explore the menu bar, let's turn the Add feature off. First, press Shift F8, then select a single file to deselect our contiguous group of files. Now, Lisa, select the Options menu, which allows you to set up the shell to suit your preferences. By clicking on Confirmation, we are given a new dialog box asking if we want to confirm each file deletion, overwrite, or mouse action. For now, make sure we have an X on every option. Click on OK and open the Option menu again. Lisa, look at Enable Task Swapper and notice we have a little diamond before this command. This shows the command is activated. We'll cover what the Task Swapper does in our Level 2 tape. For now, highlight it and press Enter. This will unselect it. Lisa, once again open the Options menu and notice our diamond is gone. This time select File, Display Options, and another dialog box will appear. Remember our DIR command? Under Sort By are some different ways of displaying files in the shell. We'll keep the listing as it is for now, so don't make any changes here. The file defaults to ascending order. Put an X here to change to descending order. Leave the hidden files hidden and make sure there is no X in this box. To look for certain types of files, you type their specifications in the name text box. For example, Lisa, type an asterisk, better known in DOS circles as a star, then a period, then EXE, and press Enter. This action finds all the execution files in the selected directory. Lisa, open the Options menu and select the File Display option again. In the name text box, type star.star and Enter to return to our normal mode.
Professor, I noticed the stars in the Files area before and now in this command. What do they mean?
Lisa, DOS uses the star symbol as a wildcard. Just as in a card game where a wildcard can represent any card you want it to, the star can represent any file name or extension in DOS. When we typed star.exe, we were telling DOS to display any file with a period .exe extension. Lisa, highlight our WP51 directory. Remember, we talked about paths earlier. If you look at the title bar for our Files window, you now see the path DOS took to display these files. This includes the name of the active drive, the directory name, which is the highlighted directory in the tree area, and the star, which means display all the files and their extensions. DOS uses the backslash to separate the different directions the path is taking. Now, Lisa, click on the plus on the WP51 directory and highlight the document subdirectory. Now look at the title bar of the files area. Reading this backwards may help. We are looking at all the files and extensions represented by the star of the document subdirectory located in the WP51 or WordPerfect directory, which is located on drive C. It is important to understand how paths work. Fortunately, when using the shell, there are only a few command options where you need to know how to enter the correct path to accomplish that option. Paths are usually already displayed for you to work with, so you don't need to know how to type them out for every little command. Now open the View menu. In this pull-down menu, we have several ways of displaying the way we can look at files in the shell. The Program File List option is grayed out because it is already selected. Viewers, when you see an option grayed out, it means the option is not available to choose at this time because it is already selected, or it is just plain not available for use at this time. Lisa, select the All Files option. This option shows you all the files on your C drive in alphabetical order. This can show you any duplicate copies of programs and files that may exist in different directories. Lisa, open the View menu again and select the Dual File option. Sometimes you want Dual File List so you can copy from one place to another and see the source and destination on the same screen. Let's see how this works. From the top window, select the Drive A icon. Now our top window shows our disk in Drive A, and the bottom shows our hard disk for Drive C. Lisa, make sure the DOS directory is highlighted in the bottom tree area. Then select about 5 files from the Files area, making sure to include the CHK-DSK file. Select the first file by clicking on it, then hold the Shift key and click on the last. We could go to the File menu and choose Copy, but I'd like to show you an easier way to do this. Press and hold down your left mouse button anywhere in the selected files. While holding the mouse button, press and hold down your Control key. Now move your mouse pointer out of the Files area toward the top tree area where the A drive is still displayed. Notice the pointer changes to an icon representing files. Put the icon on top of the A and release both the Control key and mouse button. A dialog box opens asking if we are sure we want to copy these files. Answer yes, and our selected files will copy to our disk in Drive A.
What's this, Professor? It's asking if I want to replace my check disk file.
Remember I said earlier that no two files can have the same file name. Well, DOS sees there is already a file with that name and wants to know if you want to overwrite it or keep the original. Since they are both the same file, say yes. And there are all the files now copied to our disk in Drive A. Sometimes you'll want to move files from one place to another. For instance, to move old files from a crowded directory to a floppy disk to make more room on your hard drive. This move option is in the Files menu, but the shell offers an even easier way. Lisa, select a few files in the Files area for our disk in Drive A. Click and hold your left mouse button down. This time, without the Control key, move the mouse pointer on the A in the tree area and drop the files there simply by releasing the mouse button. A dialog box appears asking if you are sure you want to move these files. We definitely don't need to do this since this would just move them back to where we got them from, so answer no. Viewers, there are a number of ways of doing things in the DOS shell. If you are not comfortable with using the mouse and keyboard yet, you may want to stop the tape at this time and practice the various ways of moving and selecting items. You needn't worry about doing anything wrong while exploring the menu bar and its dialog boxes. As long as you click the Cancel button or press Escape, nothing will happen and you can continue looking around. If you have any questions about any section of the DOS shell, opening the Help menu can help you find answers to your questions. Now let's look at the disk copy command. It is always a good idea to make a copy of all your disks containing software programs and using them instead of the originals. We will use the disk copy command to make these copies. The disk copy command is a little different than the copy command because it will make an exact copy of everything from one floppy disk to another floppy disk, including the format. In other words, if you use the disk copy command, you don't have to format a new diskette before you copy files to it. Disk copy will not work for copying files to or from the hard disk. Its purpose is to make exact copies of floppy disk. Lisa, in the View menu, select the Program File List. Then go to the main window and select Disk Utilities. Now select Disk Copy, and a dialog box opens asking you to enter the source and the destination drives. The default is A to B. Simply change your B colon to A colon if your disk drives aren't the same type and click OK. Notice DOS drops you out of the shell. You are now prompted to insert the source disk in drive A. We're going to copy our disk in drive A, and it's already there. If you wanted to copy a different disk, you would put that disk in drive A. Press any key and DOS reads the data on that disk and prompts you to put the destination disk in the appropriate drive. Let's use the new disk we have not formatted now. Remember, disk copy copies the format along with the files. Also remember, if you have any data on your destination disk, it will be erased. Everyone press Enter when ready. You may be asked to switch disk a few times, copying from and to your A drive. After a short time, we see a prompt asking you if you want to copy another disk. Press N for no, and press any key to return to the shell so we can move on to deleting files. The delete command is another important DOS command. This is the command to make a file or files vanish from the disk. Perhaps you need to remove old documents you no longer need. With the disk we just did disk copy to in drive A, select any files on top of command.com. Now select the File menu and then the option Delete. A dialog box appears displaying the first file we want deleted and asks if we want to delete this file. Answer yes, and it's gone. Here's an even faster way to delete files. Select all the files under command.com and simply press the delete key. Click on OK and answer yes to delete all the files. Be very careful with the delete command. It's possible to lose files you really wanted to keep. DOS 6.0 has an undelete command, but we won't be covering it in this lesson. Here's a trick you should know about. Sooner or later your computer will get stuck or freeze up, and you won't be able to get it to do anything. There are many ways that this can happen. If you get stuck and cannot get your computer going again, rather than turning it off and starting over, you can warm boot the computer. A warm boot recycles the machine much like turning it off and then on, but much faster. To warm boot your computer, hit the Control, Alt, and Delete keys at the same time. You will lose data that wasn't saved to disk if you are in the middle of a program, but if you are really stuck, it's about all you can do to get started again. If by some chance the machine still won't start, you can try using the disk we now have in drive A. What we have left on this disk are the bare bones files needed to boot your computer, command.com and the hidden system files. If you have this problem, putting this disk in drive A and pressing Control, Alt, Delete at the same time should get your computer started so you can figure out what went wrong. So take this disk out and label it DOS Vanilla Boot and keep it in a safe place. Warning, never use an older version of DOS with DOS 6.0 to boot your computer. You could damage the information on your hard disk if you do. Lisa, I want to show you one way of starting a program through the shell. Select the C drive. Choose our WP51 directory in the tree area. Then activate the Files area. Every program has a startup or execution file, usually marked with the program name and an EXE or COM extension. When you find this file, simply double-click on it and the program will start. If you have a program made to run with the Windows program, it will not start from the DOS shell. Okay, everyone, if you opened a program, be sure to exit it properly and return to the shell. It is very important to always exit any programs or shells, such as Windows, before you turn your computer off. Lisa, choose the DOS Shells file menu and select Exit. Well, I should mention that everything that can be done in the shell can also be done from the command line, and there are several more commands that can only be done from the command line, one of which is MemMaker, DOS 6.0's answer to the problems of memory optimization. If your computer has a 386 or higher processor, you can use this command to increase the efficiency of your computer's memory usage. Our computer is a 486, Lisa, so let's run MemMaker. First, CD back to the root directory, then type MemMaker. That's with 2 M's, and press Enter. MemMaker's title screen appears, providing you with information concerning its operation. Towards the bottom of the screen, you are asked if you want to continue or exit out of the program. Pressing the space bar will toggle you through the options that appear in this screen and those that follow. Once you make a selection, press Enter to accept it. Lisa, press Enter. On the next screen, you have an option of having MemMaker perform an express or custom installation. Unless you are comfortable working with memory management routines, we suggest you choose Express Setup and press Enter. The following screen asks if you will be using expanded memory, and unless you are absolutely sure you'll never use software such as Lotus 123 or most database packages that use expanded memory, press Enter to accept yes to this question. Once you reach this screen, you have no other choice but to continue with MemMaker. But before you press Enter, make sure the disk we created earlier in Drive A and any other disk are removed from their floppy drives. After you press the Enter key, MemMaker reboots your computer, then determines the optimum configuration for it. If your computer automatically starts Windows or other shell programs, exit out of it to allow MemMaker to continue. Continue meaning MemMaker will modify your system files and reboot your computer again. As with the previous reboot, exit out of any shells. The final step in the MemMaker process is to accept its changes to your system or to undo them. If your computer rebooted without problems or error messages, your new configuration is ready. Press Enter to accept it. However, if your computer did experience problems booting up or error messages were displayed, choose No to undo MemMaker's changes. If you accepted MemMaker's changes, an information screen will appear showing memory usage before and after MemMaker's changes. Press Enter once again and we are returned to the C prompt. MemMaker is finished and so are we, Lisa, at least for this lesson.